Tenochtitlan, mid-15th century. An Aztec priest walks up the stairs to the temple. 4 assistants hold the sacrifice down. The priest pushes the dagger into the chest as the victim screams. The Aztecs.
The Aztecs were a very religious society. Heart sacrifice was a very unique aspect of the Aztec civilization. The Aztecs committed such sacrifices because they believed it gave the gods power and they would give good produce back in return. The way we know the Aztecs committed heart sacrifice is we look at the skeletal remains of the sacrifices and we can see if the rib cage has been forced open. At the reconstruction of the Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan in 1487, the Aztec was said, based on post-conquest sources, they sacrificed up to 80,000 people over the course of 4 days. The Aztecs believed that heart sacrifice was necessary to ensure things such as rain and the sun rising again. They sacrificed to specific gods. They were polytheistic in religion, meaning they had many gods. They had gods for most aspects of daily life, from the sun god to the god of intoxication. Some historians believe they had around 100 gods, but it varies between different communities.
The Aztec Empire had great cities, and the largest in terms of population was Tenochtitlan. This city was very unique because it was based around an island and had many canals.
In most cities, a temple was the center of the city and the population was just spread around it. The Aztecs also had a very innovative way of gathering food in the cities, which was creating floating islands and planting crops on them. The soil was very fertile because of the water being right next to it and underneath.
Interestingly, even though Tenochtitlan was quite far away from any clean water sources, they built an aqueduct which gave Tenochtitlan a reliable and consistent clean water supply. There are great amounts of archaeological evidence that supports this. The social structure in the Aztec Empire consisted mainly of 4 classes: nobles, commoners, serfs, and slaves. Within the Aztec Empire, there was very little movement between the classes.
The social structure was very similar to other empires and nations. The land was allocated among the commoners and very few people owned land because they thought the gods owned the earth. There was one emperor who was called the Untitled, which means the great speaker. Several high-ranking nobles chose him from his family. He had a lot of power, but not totally. He still had to consult the nobles when making very important decisions.
As for the slaves were in that class for life, but their children were born free. The Aztecs were a unique and prosperous civilization that continued to last until February 1519. Stay tuned for episode 2, an in-depth insight into the Inca civilization.